To all the fans of Gilligan's Island, this video today is done for all of you who are fanatical fans of the show, as I am. It just does different variations of subjects dealing with the show itself. And the most important question that I'm asking in this video today is this: who were the Silvers family? Now, this is a video that I shot of one of the credits listed on some of the early VHS copies that were marketed back in the 90s that were in color. And Turner Broadcasting released these, and you can see their names at the top: Nancy Silvers, Laurie Silvers, Catherine Silvers, Candace Silvers. And they are not in any credits that have ever been shown on television since. I've never seen them listed even in the credits on the show. This is some kind of trivia questions. Why would they only show certain names of the characters in the credits for all the actors and not all of them? I mean, I think they deserved it since they all made the show work. During the video, you're going to see some pictures that I found from the early press photos that they made in the first season, and they've colorized them actually for those VHS. Now, this is the question I ask everybody: is could Glad Asaya actually have been a pseudonym for the Silvers family? Because I don't have any other answer. And this is actually another photograph from the photo press. This one shows Dawn Wells and Tina Louise in the Cinderella episode, and I tell you, I never thought that was Tina Louise. I mean, you just couldn't recognize her through all that makeup. Another press photo here. They colorized it. This shows you that the credits are listed for the show on each of the VHS copies that were colorized, and that it was in that at the bottom. Now, this is an actual candid shot of Bob Denver smiling and laughing during the episode. This one deals with the voodoo when the professor was there. And you see the torch on the right there. It actually was very close to the hut. So you knew that it was flame retardant. Another press release of Jim Backus. And here is Bob Denver in 1965, and you can see that he had white hair, and he did the year he died. He had totally gone white-headed. And I thought that was relevant to the show because most people probably didn't know that he had actually turned white-headed. This is just a question mark. What is that in the bowl that the skipper is actually eating from? And I thought, what is it? I still don't know what it was. This is Vito Scotti as the Japanese sailor. And it was colorized also from an early press photo. And this one, I've never understood this. How can anybody put barley in gravy? Because that's what it looks like it was, gravy for the meat that she had cooked for Bob Denver's character, Bond. That's Alan Hale Jr. And I don't understand why they didn't mention him being Junior in the TV series. At least the credits didn't ever show that. And here again, this is just more of the same text that was taken from the credits on the early 1990s colorized versions of the first season, because the other two seasons were colorized anyway. They were already in color. Here's Jim Backus again, another photo that they colorized from the press release shots that were taken in the first season. And I thought they were really pretty, so I thought, well, I'll include them. And quicksand in the show, it never looked real. It looked like they had poured gravel on top of water. And this is an early press shot of Tina Louise. I would say probably it was photographed in color instead of them colorizing it. That whiteness is just plastic reflection off my scanner. Here again, another trivial question about what's the earliest robot episodes. In the early 60s, it was actually Gilligan's Island. And lip guards at that time were used already in the James Bond movies. They mentioned it several times. Now, before I end the video, I have a personal experience of a dream that I had about Gilligan's Island that I had about a year and a half ago. And then I saw this shot, and it just triggered my mind to the dream. I was on the island with the castaways, and there was a there was a hurricane coming. There was not a tornado, but a hurricane. And I remember this shot of the water and this in the background just below the sun setting. I thought it was a landmass. And in my dream, I remember seeing that. And everybody's just running around trying to get to cover because in my dream, I don't remember of whether they even had huts built. So it was sort of like it made reference to that early time when they had just started trying to create things that they could use to protect themselves, from the elements. And everybody was just running around trying to figure how we're going to protect ourselves with this hurricane on the way to the island. And the wind had already started picking up, and it was just, detrimental. You knew you had to get someplace fast. And that's why when I saw this picture, it reminded me of my dream. I don't remember very much more, except that, you felt like we're all in the same boat together now. We all have to try to find a way of surviving on this island. But it just, you kind of felt funny and happy that you were with these same people that you saw on the show, but you also felt kind of like the same despair they felt at certain times, I'm sure, because here they are all the time having to move around and find things to make food, to make shelter, to make everything that they needed to survive, and you never see that part of it. It's sort of like one second they're saying, we got to do this, we got to do that, and then all of a sudden everything's done, and you think, well, they had to do all that. They didn't have somebody else actually like a prop man doing it for them. In real life, they would have had to done it themselves. And that's how you felt being on the island. In this dream was that, there's nobody else behind you trying to get all this done, and you're just sitting there making people laugh. This was a real place. And you knew that every second your life depended on working with all these other people. And that's what made Gilligan's Island work. Everybody knew they had to work with each other. They all knew there was no way to survive unless they did what they had to do, which is to cooperate, do the things they needed to do, and if they didn't, they'd be dead. And you wonder why didn't they get sick more often, since obviously they're always having to do something. Why would they be kind of like always energetic and yet be tired at the same time? But then, in other words, some reality to it wasn't in the show, because if they were really doing all this, sooner or later you're going to get sick. You're going to get down because you've been doing all of this so much. And all they had on the island was citrus, different fruits, some vegetables they might have found, breadfruit, stuff like that. But that really isn't a protein builder, Citrus is, but nothing else, as far as it giving you immunity. And all of that stuff just kind of like came into my mind of thinking how hard it really was for them to survive on that island. Now, in the years since, you've got Survivor series that's been on CBS and all this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, for me, I don't care what they do now. This show about Gilligan's Island is the most realistic show you'll ever see, because people really believed they were on that island. Dawn Wells said it in the TV movie Surviving Gilligan's Island. She went to on a tour of some of the islands in the Pacific. She said in the movie that they took her to one of these very, very isolated, remote islands in the Pacific, and she said, I was with the group, and all of a sudden this woman from one of the tribes, she ran up to me and she said, Marianne, how did you get off the island? And people back in the 60s especially really did believe that Gilligan's Island was real. And even Sherwood Schwartz said in the TV movie, he said a lot of people wrote to the network, and they kept asking, are y'all ever going to get somebody out there to rescue those folks off the island? They really believed it was a real event. And anybody who hasn't seen Gilligan's Island, or if you've seen it and thought, oh, this is, lame or whatever, I'm going to tell you, 50 years later, it still is the most popular comedy sitcom in history, because they still air it in syndication all over the world. And why? Because the formula worked between all of the cast. You didn't just have like a Laurel and Hardy routine or an Abbott and Costello routine with Alan Hale and Bob Denver. it worked with every single cast member. All of them worked together. Now, in the beginning, Tina Louise said that she didn't want anything to do with the show after that first season, but it was obvious to her she needed work, so she decided to stay until the end of the series. But she never came back after that. She said, I'm never going back to Gilligan's Island. I'm never going to do it again. And she didn't. And that's what's sad, because she and Don Wells are the only two of the original cast who are still alive. The rest of them have died since. And yet she still kind of like snubs at the idea that she might want to get involved and do something about the show again. But there was just that unique bond that exists between the cast, that it worked. And you really should see the movie Surviving Gilligan's Island, because it was made for television, and they had Alan Hale. He died, and they actually cremated his body, and he was actually laid to rest on the ocean. And his wife was there, and they mentioned things about the cast, and Jim Backus having, I believe, either Alzheimer's or he had, Parkinson's disease or something like that. And Natalie Schaefer had all these personal things going on. And just trivia for everybody, she was more than 100 years old, or close to 100, when she died. So she had to have been in her 70s when she was doing Gilligan's Island. And you would have never known that, because she never showed her true age. And Don Wells said that when she was on the show, Natalie Schaefer and her were very, very close friends with each other. And she said, I always relished that relationship that she had with her. And she said nobody ever knew her true age. Never. Russell Johnson was very close with the cast. He did some appearances on Alf with the other cast members. And he died only a year or two ago. And, it's just ironic how they've all had different experiences in their lives, but when they came together on Gilligan's Island, there was just this love for each other, not only on screen, but off screen. They just really did care about each other. And I think that, for any fan, makes you feel like, yeah, well, they related to what we were seeing on television ourselves as the audience, that that camaraderie was more than just a chemistry. It was sort of like they just knew that when they began the show, it would work, because they all had this relationship of friendship and everything else, and it just came together on screen, and it worked so perfectly. And as a matter of fact, people really don't even know this. They did an animated series 2 times on Gilligan's Island after. The first one was called The New Adventures of Gilligan. It had all the original cast except for Don Wells and Tina Louise, who didn't come back. And then I think Don Wells, when she did Gilligan's Planet, which was a second animated series, she came back and did Ginger's voice in that series. And they were both done by Filmation. And today they're both owned actually by MGM, I think, or Time Warner. So, it's like they were never going to let this thing get out of their hands. They've kept it all these years since. And the new Adventures of Gilligan, I don't know why they haven't marketed on VHS or DVD since, because it had the same animation as Gilligan's Planet. And it worked. It was such a brilliant show. And the cast wanted to do it. So this is more than a phenomena. It's like the entire cast wanted to do it. And that's the reason I felt I wanted to do this, in memory of the cast who just held the whole thing together. And I'm telling you, they've never been able to duplicate it since. And I don't think they ever should try to, because the original is the best, and no matter what they do since, it ain't never going to be any better. So thanks for letting me share on this, and if you'd like to comment, please do. Thank you.